Shalom. Let me introduce my wife, Debbie, and my daughter, Yael. She's the smallest, the last of the pack of 8. And we're very pleased to be here. You know, for me, I love every word in the Scriptures. But there are ones that really, there are certain ones that they just kind of give me this thrill. Okay, it's like I get goosebumps at certain expressions. One of them is for such a time as this. Don't y'all like that one? Have you ever marveled at how a particular reading will coincide with a particular message? It wasn't planned that way, but that it was planned that way. You just didn't realize the plan. So here we are at the Parshat Re'eh, which means to see. And it starts off, see, I present before you today a blessing and a curse. Now, Re'eh, while we see it as a word meaning to see out of your eyes, it has a fuller meaning. It means to understand. And so we have the blessing that you hearken to the commandments of Hashem your God. He says, I present before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing that you hearken to the commandments of Hashem your God that I command you today. And the curse, if you do not hearken, but you follow the ways of the nations. Okay, so it drops on them. And he says that the people are going to, when they come to the land, they'll come to the heart of the land, which is biblical Shechem, modern day Nablus, which sits between two mountains, Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. And there'll be the blessing and the curse. Chapter 12, that was the end of chapter 11. And this is, I want to read 2 paragraphs because it's going to deal with the location of the temple. People always ask me, why do we have to have it at the exact place? Why can't we just have it in the general area? Why does it have to be, people will understand it has to be in Jerusalem, but why do we have to have the exact place? Because we're told here in this Parsha. So it says, these are the decrees and the ordinances that you shall observe to perform in the land that Hashem, the God of your forefathers, has given you, to possess it all the days that you live on the land. You shall utterly destroy all the places where the nations that you are driving away worship their gods on the high mountains and on the hills and under every leafy tree. You shall break apart their altars. You shall smash their pillars and their sacred trees, your asherim, their asherim. You shall burn in the fire. Their carved images shall you cut down, and you shall obliterate their names from that place. You shall not do this to Hashem your God. Rather, only at the place that Hashem your God will choose from among all your tribes to place his name, there you shall seek out his presence and come there. And there shall you bring your burnt offerings and your feast offerings, your tithes, what you raise up with your hands, your vow offerings, your freewill offerings, and the firstborn of your cattle and your flocks. You shall eat there before Adonai your God. You shall rejoice with your every undertaking, you and your households, as Hashem your God has blessed you. You shall not do like everything that we do here today. Rather, every man what is proper in his eyes. For you shall not yet have come to the resting place or to the heritage that Hashem your God gives you. And it goes on. But I just find it amazing that here we are here. This is what we're talking about, the place of the Holy Temple. Now, there's a big controversy that's breaking out all across the world. Is it on the Temple Mount? Is that the correct place, or is it down at the city of David? On the Temple Mount, there are 3 different locations that different teachers say it's to the north, it's in the middle, it's to the south. There is a new theory that it's not at the city of David and not on the Temple Mount, but is in the Armenian quarter. That one just popped up about a month ago. It's time to define where it is, and hopefully we'll be able to do that today and tomorrow. I want to thank you for having us. We have enjoyed it. We've met many friends that are here. I know a lot of you know Deanna Dye. She's going to be here this afternoon. Rico Cortez was watching last night. I talked to him this morning, and so you're having a lot of attention. People are looking at you. Thank you again.
And it is a divine appointment. That Re'eh is what the scriptures are here today. We didn't plan it that this was going to be the teaching. But let's go further on here to verse 10. And it says there that, actually verse 8, where our brother finished off, you must not act as we do here today. Every man who does what is right for him. And in a sense, even in the politics of today, in today's headlines, in today's news, everybody is doing what is right in their own eyes. Everybody is acting what they think and taking back. Heard of all the statues they're trying to take down. They even were burning our beloved Abraham Lincoln and wanting to take George Washington out of the $1 bills. They're trying to take every idol out of America. Every statue, which should have probably not been there in the first place. But we are told to take all the idols out of Israel. Yes. Now, by the way, this is not a joke. This is not a joke, okay? I'm not joking, but Israel doesn't have idols except one. There's only one idol that is in Israel, and it's in Abu Ghosh. And if you go to Israel, you go to Abu Ghosh, there on top of the hill, you will find a restaurant called the Elvis Inn. Yes, been there. Have pictures of the idol. Yeah. And the only place in Israel that there's an idol, here he is, Elvis Presley in his 1970s look with his guitar, big giant statue. That's the one that should come down. But everybody does what is right in their own eyes today. What we need to learn to do, and of us, this is the time when we need to really learn what Yeshua said and learn to turn the other cheek. Learn to go beyond even that which we are called to do and seek for peace and seek for unity. And that unity is going to have to come here even in the congregation. Because today we don't have unity in the Christian world, in the Messiah. There's no unity any place. What we really need among ourselves, among Torah observant believers, is the idea of unity. That unity which Adonai would call us for one another. Now, it goes on to say there, you are about to cross the Jordan. Now remember, the book of Deuteronomy takes place in about a 1 month period. And it is the Greek word deuteronomos, or the repetition of the law, the second law, the second repetition of Torah. And it takes place in a 1 month period. And Moshe actually does a summary of everything that Adonai had given us in the first year. And remember, the 40 years is actually, we don't know what happened in the 40 years. We know they moved around, but we don't know what happened. In the book of Numbers, it kind of ends right after the first year and the coming to Kadesh Barnea. And then all of a sudden we have 40 years of silence. And then we're on the other side of the Jordan. And so he kind of gives us that idea that, okay, you are here on the other side. You're about to cross the Jordan and live in Haaretz, in the land that Yahweh your Elohim grants to you to inherit. He will give you relief from your enemies that surround you, and you shall live in security to the place chosen by Yahweh your Elohim as a home for his name. So that place you are to bring all that I command you, your holocaust, your sacrifices, your tithes, your offerings from your hands, and all the best of your possessions that you vow to Yahweh. There you shall rejoice in the presence of Yahweh your Elohim, your sons and daughters, your serving men and women, and all the Levite that lives in your towns, since he has no share of inheritance with you. And so it is, again, a second time here in this same portion that he reminds us about Jerusalem. Not in all the hills of, before this time, and in the time of the patriarchs, there was altars set up. Altars, these areas where people, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob would come and stand face to face with Adonai. But now Adonai is doing a thing where he's going to center his name in Jerusalem, in the foundation of peace, Jerusalem. He's going to center his name. That's why it is so important for us to pray, thy kingdom come. It's so important for us to pray that Adonai would bring Messiah to rebuild his temple. Now we know before Adonai brings Messiah to build his temple, the Messianic temple, the fourth temple, there's going to be a third temple. That's the one that is being built today, the third temple. But that's going to be destroyed. That is the temple that we hear about in Daniel 9:27. That is the temple where Yeshua told us the abomination of desolation of Daniel is going to take place. That is the third temple. And that's going to be destroyed. But then Messiah is going to come and build a fourth temple in Jerusalem, in the place he gave his name a home. And remember, when Solomon dedicated at the first Hanukkah of the temple period, the first Hanukkah was actually the dedication of the tabernacle and the altar there, but the second Hanukkah, I guess we could say, but the first one of the temple, and he dedicated it. And one of the things that he says, this is the place where you've given your name a home. But over here it promises us there in 11, 20, 31, and 32, that if we forsake Yahweh, if we forsake Adonai, if we forsake his Torah, his Haderech, we are going to be cast out. And Solomon repeats the same thing. If we are in exile, then we need to look to Jerusalem. We need to look to Jerusalem, to the place where even today, the Temple Mount today is desecrated by the false god Allah and the false prophet Muhammad. It's desecrated, but that is still the place. It's still that place where he gave his name a home. It still belongs to Adonai. Even though they've taken it over, it still belongs to Adonai. It will always be Adonai's, as the land will always be Adonai. No matter what army or what nation has decided to possess it and to take over it, that government, whether it was Babylon or Assyria, whether it was Rome or Greece, It's still Adonai's land. It's still Adonai's 32 acres. It still belongs to him. And right here we are told that this is the place where he will give his name a home. And he even goes to say here in verse 13, take care you do not offer holocaust, burnt offerings, in all the sacred places. See, only in the place Yahweh chooses in one of your tribes may you offer your holocaust and do all I command you. Again, Yerushalayim. Again, only in that mount. Only in that one place. And it has to be that one place. Still, whenever you want to, you may slaughter and eat flesh in any of your towns. And these are two kinds. There's that which is slaughtered for our food, our own use, or that which is given up to Adonai. And he says the clean and unclean, and it's not talking about food, it's talking about the people, may eat the food that is just killed for food, and the animals that are killed for food. And then he talks about being able to give that to the Levites and those that are serving in the temple. And there, by the way, in verse 21, if the place in which Yahweh your Elohim chooses to set his name is too far away, you may slaughter any of your herd or flock that Yahweh has given you in the way I have laid down for you. In the what? In the way I have laid down for you. This is a little hint that Adonai has given to us, that there is a ritual prescribed for slaughter. Again, we're talking about animals for food. One of the things that many Gentiles who come into the faith, come into the olive tree of Israel, they eat blood, which it's forbidden for us, and they eat the meat of strangled animals, or the meat of what we call roadkill today, which is forbidden for us. There is a ritual slaughter way which most of us here that have grown up with our Sephardic ancestors in New Mexico know that there is a way to slaughter the animal in a ritual way. And that's what this is talking about. There is a way where the blood is completely drained and the blood is completely taken away, that every aspect of that animal is slaughtered in a way that the suffering, and look at this, in the way I have laid down. And that has been passed on from father to son, father to son, father to son. And it should be passed on. And as we even today slaughter our sheep and goats, and we do it that way. And if anybody wants to know how to do that, we would be happy to teach there, as we would be happy to teach all the other ways that the Haderech, the Mishpatim, the Hukim, on how to do some of these things, including burial and stuff like that. For those of you that might be visitors here, don't get scared from the we have a coffin back there, and we have a coffin ready all the time, because there is a way of burial called Tahara that we have. Again, in coming back to Torah, we need to come back to all these things. Following Torah is not just about tzitzits or wearing a talit, or it's not just about some of these outward stuff. It's about a whole lifestyle, whole different change that Adonai wants us to have. And again, we talk about ritual slaughter there. Okay, now watch verse 26. But the holy things you have and those you have vowed, you must go and take to the place that Yahweh chooses. The holocaust of flesh and blood you must offer on the altar of Yahweh your Elohim. In your sacrifices, the blood must be poured out on the altar of Yahweh your Elohim. The flesh you must eat yourself. Be faithful in keeping all the instructions, the mishpatim, that I give you, and obey them, so that you and your sons after you may be happy for always doing what is good and right in the eyes of Yahweh your Elohim. And of course, as we've seen so many times, if we don't, and again, we're not talking, one of the things that, especially in evangelical Christianity, everything is, well, will we lose our salvation or gain? It has nothing to, these are not salvation issues. The Torah is not a salvation issue. The Torah was not given to us in Goshen. And Adonai did not say, follow this Torah and I will redeem you. Follow this way and I will set you free. I will save you. No, he saved us by the blood of the Lamb. And then he took us to Sinai. And at Sinai, a redeemed people, a saved people, a people of Adonai were given the instruction on how to live the good life. Torah is about living the good life. A blessed life, a life that gives not salvation or loss of salvation, but a life that gives abundance and prosperity and success. And again, we're not talking about Cadillacs or all this type of stuff. And so Adonai there in Jerusalem, there is the only place where the blood must be shed. There's a lot of people that are coming back to Hebraic faith. There's a lot of people that come in and say, oh, I'm learning about my Hebrew roots and stuff like that. And here in New Mexico, three years ago, brother, we had a family that sacrificed a sheep for Passover. And only in Jerusalem. And by the way, only when we have our temple back, only when we have a high priest. It cannot even be without a high priest. It cannot be without an altar. There must be a holy, separated altar there. And the red heifer, first of all, to cleanse everything that needs to be cleansed before, because the cleansing of everything has to come first. And we were talking about that last night, and I believe our brother is going to talk about it again. Now, let's go to chapter 13. All I command you, you must keep and observe, adding nothing to it, taking nothing away. The most important thing for a Torah observant person to remember is this. And this is very, very simple. Very simple. 2 plus 2 is 4. How many of you remember that? 2 plus 2 is 4. Okay. 2 plus 2 is not 5. 2 plus 2 is not 3. We cannot add to truth, the truth of Torah, the Chaderech, the way of Yahweh, that even our father Abraham, it says he followed the way Chaderech Yahweh. We cannot add to it. We cannot subtract from it. It must always be 2 plus 2 equals 4. And again, in many of the Judaisms and many of the Christianities, there's been additions and subtractions. And we need to learn from this verse This verse should make it very clear to us that we should be afraid of Adonai. In everything we say, we do. That's why even Paul says, not many of you be teachers, because a teacher is going to get a secondary, a double judgment. Because even from what we say, we will be judged. And so we have to be very careful what we teach. And so that right there, please underline that verse. Put it in yellow. And always when you're studying, when you open your word and you're studying, and you think of something, oh, this might be this, or this might be this. Let's be very careful on that. Now, in chapter 13, here in verse 2 and 3 area, it talks about being incited by false prophets and being incited by others that would come. And it says there, if a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arises among you and offers to do a sign or a wonder for you, and that sign and wonder comes about. Look, it comes about. There's a lot of them that have you seen all the prophets out there that are prophesying all kinds of stuff? Did you know that the world's going to end tomorrow? How many believe the world's going to end tomorrow? There's prophets out there that are saying the world's going to end tomorrow because of the eclipse, as if there's never been an eclipse before or never will be again. There's signs that Adonai gives us, but an eclipse is not the end of the world. But there are false prophets. But the wonder takes place. And if he says to you, come then, let us follow other Elim, whom you do not know, or you have not known, and serve them. You are not to listen to the words of that prophet or the dreamer of dreams. Yahweh your Elohim is testing you to know if you love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul. Yahweh your Elohim you shall follow him, you shall fear his commandments, you shall keep his voice, you shall obey him, you shall serve, to him shall you cling to. That prophet or that dreamer of dreams must be put to death, for he has preached apostasy from Yahweh your Elohim. There's a lot of, again, today on TV, you can see many what I call false prophets. And always remember, false prophets are also after false prophets. They want to fleece you. They want to fleece the sheep and take that which you've been blessed with. They want to take your wool, and they want to take that for themselves. And I'm sure our brother has met many of those. We've been in contact with many of these people that we right away. And many times they come, and there's wolves in sheep's clothing. But remember, not only is there wolves in sheep's clothing, but there's also shepherds, pastors in sheep's clothing. And not only is there wolves in sheep's clothing, there's pastors or shepherds in sheep's clothing, but probably one of the most dangerous of wolves that try to deceive are sheepdogs in sheep clothing. You ever think of a sheepdog in sheep clothing? A sheepdog is there to help the shepherd to round up the sheep and things like that. But there's a lot of times I've seen people come and says, you know what, Pastor? Adonai has called me to be a sheepdog. Adonai has called me to help you and keep the sheep in order. And all of a sudden, they start biting the sheep. They start fleecing and they start eating the sheep. So be careful not only of wolves in sheep's clothing, but wolves in shepherd's clothing and wolves in sheepdog's clothing. Okay. So we have to be careful of this. Watch this in verse 7. If your brother, the son of your father, or your mother, or your son, or your daughter, or the wife you have chosen, or the friend with whom you share your life. If one of these secretly tries to entice you, saying, come, let us serve other Elim, which neither you nor your fathers have practiced, Elim, gods from among those of the people, you must not give way to them nor listen to them. So sometimes even from family will come and try to entice you away from Torah. Remember, Moshe is warning Israel that has just received the Torah. Now, what's interesting about our group here is that our ancestors, when the Inquisition came, our ancestors were enticed to follow the paganism within Catholicism. They were enticed for their life. You either become one of us or you die. And our ancestors were enticed. Think of it. Our ancestors, the reason we're here today in New Mexico as Sephardim, as Anusim, the reason we're here today is because our ancestors were enticed for the sake of their lives, to live, to have a job, to have a career. And they gave up Torah. Some of them reluctantly, some of them just gave it up. And they started following the idolatry of Catholicism. And even here in New Mexico, some of our ancestors were sent to Mexico City. Some of them were burned at the stake. Some of them were tried. And they gave up. One of our ancestors, that is one of our ancestors, not only to myself, but to many of you, became one of the leaders of the Rosary Society here in New Mexico after he was found to be Jewish, circumcised. And he said, no, I repented. I'm a good Catholico. And the punishment was that he was supposed to lead the rosary for the men. And that's why in New Mexico we have a lot of men that are totally rosary oriented. The idolatry. But you know what? Adonai has opened our eyes. It's as scales fell from my eyes years ago when I realized as a Catholic priest that, wait, this is idolatry. I remember it was a Christmas service and we had a baby Jesus statue right here, and everybody was supposed to come and kiss it, and everybody was kissing it, and I was getting the heebie-jeebies. And in a sense, I got the statue out of the little manger that the bishop had, set for everybody. And I took the statue out and I said, you know what? That manger's empty. That manger's empty. And we're not going to do this. And of course, I got in trouble with the bishop. But we broke all our statues. We broke all our statues. In fact, Norma, it was your grandma. It was your grandma, my aunt, your grandma, that started sharing with me that you're following the wrong way. You need to follow the Sabbath. And my aunt, your grandma was the first one in our family that went back to start the Sabbath. That was years and years ago. It's good to see you, my cousin. And so even if a family member entices us back, we were enticed. Now we've come back. Now we're going to follow Torah, and we're not going to go back to idolatry. And let me tell you, the generation that decides that we're going to stand up and be Torah observant, we don't know everything. You know, I started this path in the 70s, when it was 79 when I resigned being a priest and said, you know what, I'm going to follow Torah, I'm going to follow Pesach, and I'm going to follow the feast, and little by little I started learning and learning and learning. I'm still learning. And there's never going to be a time when we're going to stop learning. But we cannot allow ourselves, if anyone entices you, let's do this, let's do that. Always remember, where does it say in Scripture? Where does the Torah? And it's the Torah, not Joshua to Revelation. Those confirm. From Joshua to Revelation, they confirm. But the foundation is Torah. When Paul went not to the Christian, Berean Christians, there's no such thing as Berean Christians. They're always talking about Berean Christians, brother. There's no Berean Christians. It was a Jewish synagogue where Paul preached. And it says they searched the Scriptures to see if these things be so. And those Scriptures, the Tanakh and the Torah, is where you begin. That's where you start. And that's where we start building the foundation of who we are. In verse, 13. If you hear that in one of the towns that Yahweh your Elohim has given you for a home, there are men, scoundrels, from your own stock, who have led fellow citizens astray, come, let us serve other Elim, whom you have not known. It is your duty to look into the matter, examine it, and inquire most carefully. By the way, see what it says there? If someone is teaching scoundrels, teaching false doctrine, it is our responsibility to what? Look at that. It is your duty to look into the matter. It is not our duty to become hotheads. Have you noticed? In fact, one of the things yesterday, I received my son runs our he reads all the emails that I get. I don't read those, he does. And he tells me, Dad, there's this person, a well-known international messianic musician whom you probably know, whom many of you know, who knows me, sent me a negative email because of what we're doing here this weekend. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? And right away, without asking who's the teacher, what we're doing, he sends off, cuts me off. A hothead. Look what's going on, because of these statutes of the civil. Wait a second, wasn't that over 100 years ago that's over with? And yet now they're fighting about statues? Hotheads. And you know what? I believe Trump was right. It's on both sides. It's on both sides. It's not just one side or the other. It's the right and the left. It's those neo-Nazi Ku Klux Klan, and it's Black Lives Matter, and all. It's both sides. And in fact, if it was up to me, any believer that is on either side, I excommunicate right now. We excommunicate. They are not believers. They're hotheads. It says, what does the Torah say? Look into the matter, examine it, inquire most carefully. Whenever you hear something or someone says something that you disagree, especially with today's media, please do not use your email, your, what do they call that, texting, your little Google machines. Please do not attack people using all that. because you're going to live to regret it afterwards. Oh man, I shouldn't have said that. What does James say about the tongue? It's a double-edged sword. But the tongue now has little fingers. The tongue has grown little fingers, and here you are. And you could kill a brother, a sister, as you could bless one. But it says, look into the matter, inquire about it. And then, if such a hateful thing has taken place, then, yeah, now you could judge. But it has to be taken over. I want to give our brother as much time as possible this afternoon, so we're going to stop here and we're going to go home and eat, or remember it's a Sabbath, so we can't go to restaurants or anything like that, but go home, eat. And those of you that might be guests here, we have some food in the back, and so let's go ahead and stand. And I'm going to ask our brother if he could give the Aaronic blessing.
Yivrecha Adonai v'yishmecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha, Yisah Adonai panav elecha v'yasim lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face toward you and grant you peace.
Shalom, shalom, and we'll be back at 2 o'clock. Come by 1:30 or so that we could get ready to start exactly at 2, and you're welcome. And we're going to do the blessings for the bread and the cup.